Evalueserve, focused on leveraging data for better business decisions. And I'm your host, Erin Pearson. Today, we're joined by Melanie Courtright, who is the CEO of the Insights Association, which is the leading voice for the market research and data analytics community in the US. With over 25 years in the industry, Melanie is an expert methodologist who has developed groundbreaking research platforms and best practices throughout her career. Since 2020, she's led the Insights Association in its mission to protect and advance the insights industry. Melanie, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm super excited to be here. I'm really honored that you asked me to be part of your podcast. Thank you.
Yeah, we're really excited to have you here. And today, Melanie is going to join us to explore how AI is transforming market research and data analytics and how businesses can harness these technologies to make better decisions. So just to jump right in, the market research landscape has transformed dramatically in recent years, I think, as we've all seen. And there's been a lot of talk about AI, but beyond just AI, what fundamental shifts are reshaping how companies gather and use their insights today?
Yeah, that's a big question. So just to give you a little bit of context on me and my role and why I even have a point of view on such a big question for the sector, right? Insights Association is the trade association for all things insights and analytics in the US. Insights Association's actually been around for almost 75 years. And so we've been measuring and protecting and advocating and advancing this profession for all these years. Our goal is to watch it, measure it, protect it, create demand for it, and really help it thrive. And so in doing so, we certainly follow the profession very closely. We know a lot about it. And this transformation that you're talking of, actually, this most recent transformation, I could tell you as a profession, we've been through a lot of transformations, right? From door to door to paper to telephone and to online. This most recent transformation actually began quite a few years ago with the change in the landscape of data, with the amount and the dramatic increase of both the types and the volume of data that's available to use. And then from there, with tools to manage, mine, and interpret that data. So prior to 2020, the largest sector in insights and analytics, and we have 8 sectors that we measure. The largest sector was what we call the established market research sector. You think of firms like Nielsen and Ipsos and those big, beautiful, traditional established market research firms. That was by far the largest sector. Just over the last 5 years, that has switched, and the largest sector is now the digital data and analytics segment. And that segment is made up of companies that use internal and external data to drive real-time decisioning about everything from performance marketing to advertising, pricing, inventory management, you name it. They're using digital data and analytics to drive real-time decision-making. And so that is actually the largest segment now. All driven by this change truly in the data that we use as a profession. So the AI is certainly a tool that is driving how we're evolving and changing as a profession, but it still all goes back to the root of the change, which is the amount, volume, and types of data that we have available to us in decision making now. So those types and volumes of data changes have changed the players, the talent, the tools, and it's even changed how brands behave, what they outsource, what they insource, who they report to in the organizational structure. You can see a lot of that actually happening in 2025. And so it's just changed everything, and it all goes back to the roots of the data. It's no longer just primary research data from phone and online and paper surveys. It's all the data available for decision making and all the tools needed to manage that kind of data.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that you said in particular, it's not just one department that's handling all the data anymore. There's been a big shift in everybody's role that really everyone in business to business or any type of company, really, they have to understand the data, and everyone is responsible for that, and everyone's bringing data to the table and having to interpret what it means and how is it going to impact the business as well.
Yeah, that's right. The talent has really shifted and is shifting again this year. So the researcher of tomorrow will really be much more technology focused.
Yeah. And the traditional technology data person has to be able to understand and interpret and do that storytelling component to all of the data as well. So there's going to be this intermingling of roles.
That's right. And our role as the Insights Association is to break down the silos between those functions, because a lot of what the insights professionals understand could be ported over to the data and analytics function. And a lot of what the insights and analytics, so the analytics and data functions do, needs to be shared and ported over to the traditional insights and market researchers, like ethics of research, governance of research. Those two things should be working much more closely together and not so siloed within organizations. Those shifts are happening now, and our job is to build community and break down silos, those different stakeholders in an organization.
Yeah, and that's super important. So one of the things that we're seeing is naturally data quality is a persistent challenge in the industry. So what are the most concerning trends you're seeing in data collection, and what are some steps that companies can take to ensure more reliable insights?
Yeah, the first big problem is just understanding what the definition of data quality means in insights and analytics, and in data analytics especially. We formed a group called Global Data Quality, the GDQ initiative. You can go to globaldataquality.org. It's all of your global trade associations working together. We started by just defining data quality. Data quality is this umbrella term, and so much sits underneath that, right? From fraud, which is a true concern, but also to survey design, representativeness, understanding the utility of a data set, structuring a data set. And so there's a lot that sits under that. And the biggest problem right now is just defining data quality and having measurement to understand a data set's utility and fit for purpose. Is it fit for decision making? And so having measures in place to define that is something that, as a profession, that we need to do better. As a profession of measurement, we need to measure that specific issue more and deliver more statistical models and analytic tools to help us understand, is the data set high quality? And so we're working on that. The issue is that without those, buyers don't have good quality buying signals. And so when they're pushed with something in a proposal format and they need to make a decision, and they don't have a very transparent way to say, this data quality is going to be higher than this one, this data set's going to be a better use for my decision making than this one, they end up buying solely on price. And so the way that we erode the price erosion is by building those signals in so that they can buy on something other than price. But that's on us. We have to do that. And so that's our big goal over the next 5 years, especially with all the ways that data is changing, to build back in some of those quality buying signals.
Yeah. I think it also goes back to the business stakeholder. Part of data quality also is, what is the question that you're trying to answer? And sometimes it's not clear to people who are actually looking at the data and choosing the data set. What is that more business impact that you're trying to get? Because there's this game of telephone that oftentimes gets played in an organization, that it gets watered down depending on who's making the purchase decision. So having that clarity is really important.
100%. Tying our work back to the actual balance sheet metrics, actual P&L metrics, so important to understanding the value and the quality of the work that we do. I say all the time, we should start with, what is the business question and business problem that you're trying to solve? What's the metric that's tied to that business problem that you're trying to move? And everything should flow from there, and everything that we do should tie back to that. And if we do that, then we don't have face those issues of, what is insights? What value is it delivering? Oh, well, we moved these 5 numbers on your balance sheet in just the past 12 months, and that created more value for our stakeholders. So 100% agree with that. That's a bit of a soapbox for me, so I'm glad you mentioned it.
Yeah. So contrary to what we've been kind of implying so far, actually in 2023, growth in the US insights and analytics market actually slowed to about 7.5%. So what's been driving that slowdown, and where do you see the new opportunities for growth?
Well, I will say that coming out of COVID, I know it's 5 years later and we're still talking about COVID, but there is a context here that's important. When COVID happened and face-to-face market research took such a hit, and then the economy sort of wobbled and buying changed, there was a pretty big dip in the insights and analytics growth rate. And so in 2020, we had, very low growth rate. It rebounded in 2021 and in 2022. A bit of a correction happened. Face to face came back. And so we had very large double digit growth rates. In 2023, it slowed down and sort of kind of corrected, but closer to where it was pre-COVID. Pre-COVID, it was around 9 to 10%. So, but there was a bit of a correction again and a slow back down. So some of the 2023 growth rate was just that sort of slowdown from those two big years of post-COVID correction. But now we're seeing in 2024 that it's slowing down a little bit still, and in 2025 maybe even more. There's a few things affecting that. There's a lot of pricing. There's a lot of anxiety. It's an anxiety-riddled market these days. You can watch the stock market and see that. But the buyers and the users of research, the brands that are buying research, they're skittish on spending money. There's a lot of anxiety in the economic world right now. So there's a lot of pricing and finance and inflation and interest rate issues, all causing people to really slow down on their decision making to spend money. On top of that, there's a lot of client reorgs, client changes. We talked about that a few minutes ago. So much going on in the client side of just the types of work that they're doing, and how they want to do that work, and the tools and the outsourcing that they're doing. And so compile all of that to the fact that our tools are changing, our society's changing. We've got a very big $76 billion profession. It's very mature. So that means everybody's coming out and trying to sell. And in the middle of that selling world, there's a lot of noise. And the brands are very confused as to who to partner with, because they're having trouble. I've had several brands tell me that if they just responded to sales calls, sales lunches, requests for drinks, requests for meetings, it would take up 60 to 65% of their days every day. And so they've got to choose who to respond to. And it's hard to choose because it's hard to cut through all of that noise and all of that messaging and have them read your email or hear your voicemail or get your snail mail and say, okay, this is one that I think looks interesting. So all of that's coming together for a lot of change all at once, and a lot of anxiety in the market, and then finally a lot of noise in the marketplace, and brands feeling a little paralyzed with how to proceed.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of companies are everyone's trying to grow naturally.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you do as a business. So when you're doing that, you're trying to expand your offerings. So that's where you get all of these other companies that are offering types of analytic services as part of this, or insight services. So it's more competitive
Yep.
than it used to be as well. And then also, on another episode of the podcast, we were talking with somebody about pilotitis, because there's so many AI pilots that are starting that people are also trying to figure out, they know that they can do things with it, but really what's going to be the impact in the long term, what's going to be the long-term scenario that's going to play out, and where are you actually going to invest? So
Yep.
to the point that you were making, there's a lot of decisions being done, and where should people actually invest, and what's bad today versus what's going to be lasting for like that 5-year level of investment.
Yeah. I mean, so we've been through changes in our profession, and we've had a couple of things changing at once. Right now, to everyone, it feels like everything is changing at once. And so in a world where everything is changing at once, how do you as a leader in your company decide which thing to address, or how do you move all of them forward at the same time? And then when you finally make some decisions, given the fact that everyone else is trying to grow their business and message too, how do you cut through all of that noise and stand out? That is the most important question for business leaders right now. It is a very, very message heavy world right now, in all walks of our life. And so how do you build a message that cuts through a lot of that noise and makes somebody take your call? It's a really important piece. You can't just build a good product or service anymore. You have to build a good product or service that you can deliver with a message that's compelling.
Yeah. How do you differentiate? That actually leads me into the next question. And as you mentioned, like the relationship between research agencies and vendors and clients is evolving rapidly. So how are successful insights teams restructuring their partnerships to deliver more of this strategic value and create that differentiation to stand out in a sea of options?
Yeah, I mean, we talked a little bit about it a moment ago, but it really comes down to creating those actionable insights at the speed of decision making. And so the way you get to them to the table, though, is you have to be able to say to them, I can solve X problem for you that will improve Y metric for you. And I can do that in at the speed of the decision that you need to make. So that's actually kind of a complicated formula, though. Even though it just sounds like X plus Y equals Z, it's not that simple. So if you want to be able to say, I can solve X problem for you, you really have to know the business enough to know what the problems are. You have to get them to open up and tell you, here are the problems that our business is facing. And you can sometimes really struggle to do that if all you're doing is cold calling and cold emailing. So then you have to take it from there and say, okay, and we're going to tie that to X metric, to Y metric. And so now you have to know enough about the metrics, about what they're hoping to move it by, and then finally say, okay, and I can do that with this set of solutions. And to prove the solutions and to prove that you're the right company for those solutions, the companies that are doing well, that are growing, they're solving that equation. They know what the problem is, they know what the metric is, and they know how to solve it, and they can convince the buyer in a compelling way that it's high quality, even without those quality buying signals, and that it's actually going to move the metric. And so it's actionable insights at the speed of decision making that ties back to the balance sheet and the P&L metrics. And then the other ones are actually they're bringing all the data to the party and they're experimenting. Actually, I don't know if people know, but a lot of companies, and we have quite a few brands on our board, and several of them tell us that they actually have experimentation budgets. So if you've got something that you want to experiment with, you should just be transparent about that with a big brand and say, I've got something that's brand new. I'd like to experiment with this with you. Do you have an experimentation budget? And so some of the companies that are doing really cool growth trajectories right now are doing more of that. They're experimenting with brands and helping them try something new to get something and learn something new.
That's really cool. I think a lot of people are experimenting right now. That's what we've seen with our own
Yep.
client base as well. I think a lot of the technologies are new and a lot of the approaches are new. So people are trying to figure out what is it that works, how are they going to implement it, what does it mean for their team. Like there's just a lot of considerations that go into that.
There is.
But I think to your point, how you stand out in the market is you get so many emails every day about people trying to sell things, and most of them are just all about them. So if you do take that extra, it could be 20 minutes of research. It's not a substantial amount, but if it's going to be the difference of getting a meeting versus not, it's well worth the time to do that. Of just, what is their CEO saying in the earnings reports
Right.
that we're putting out? What are their employees posting on LinkedIn? Like, what are these different signals that you can pick up on, and then go in with an informed hypothesis of what is it that they need, and say, I understand what you guys are saying. I want to help you do this. And I think to the second point of what you said, bringing in that story to convince them and saying, this is how we've done it with other clients, and having a compelling story that shows that you have done it before. Or to the second point that you made, admit that it's an experiment and say, like, this is something that's new. And I personally love it when people say, hey, do you want to do an experiment? Because I really enjoy doing new things or trying out new technology. Certain personalities love it, certain ones don't. You have to find the right buyer for that. But it can be really powerful when you find that.
It can be. I love your point about doing your homework. All of us get those emails where you can tell they don't even know what your company does, much less as Insights Association. We're the association. I get emails every day of people trying to sell me research services, and I'm like, you clearly didn't do your homework on my association. We're not buyers of research, and so taking that 3 to 5 minutes, it will do so much for you just to even hit their website. But I love the idea of even using some of the generative AI tools that are out there to ask it some questions about the company, about the earnings, about the employees. You can do that so much easier today than you could, 5 years ago. And it will go a long way towards cutting through some of the noise in the inboxes.
Oh, I definitely agree. It's both never been harder and never been easier.
Right.
All of this.
But it is changing the way you sell. I mean, that's the biggest thing. The way we sell has to change now, and it's changing now. And the companies that are figuring out that new selling model are succeeding, and the ones that are not succeeding completely.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are so many data collection methodologies that are available today. So how should companies approach building this balanced research portfolio that means both speed and quality requirements?
Yeah, I mean, for those of you who don't know me, it's not a Melanie Courtright chat unless I say fit for purpose, right? So, or trade-off analysis. So, this always comes down to just a really good fit for purpose trade-off conversation and consideration. So, you have to ask yourself all the questions. What are you trying to learn? Is the goal to explore or is it to describe? Because if you're just exploring, you can do qualitative. If you're trying to describe, you actually need some quantitative structure around what you're trying to do. Are you looking, what's the audience that you're looking for? Is it consumers, businesses, segments? Can they, how's best to engage them? Where's the best place to find their data? Do you need specialized recruitment or specialized finding of the data that you're looking for? How much money do you have? What's your tolerance for mistake? What's good enough? There's all these questions that you need to think about every time you design, an insights exercise. And I say insights because even when you're in the data and analytics, you are doing data and analytics to create insights that drive decision making. And so we're all insights people, no matter what we're doing. Whether more traditional primary research or analytics and data stacking. So it really comes down to this really fit for purpose conversation that you have to have. Truthfully, you need to be able to have everything be on the table, all kinds of data, all kinds of methods, all kinds of modes. And the researchers need to be comfortable sort of hopping around different methods and modes and making the right recommendation for the right project and the right problem. So there's no one answer. I remember years ago a new tool would come in and they say, okay, no, now the old tools are going to die. The old tools don't die. We just add to our tool set. AI is here, and people have said now online's going to die. It's not going to die, but we are going to begin to use AI for things that we used to use online for, and there'll be a wider set of tools, and we just have to apply the right solution to the right problem.
It's more about an evolution of everything.
Yeah, it's always a trade-off, though. There's no perfect insight exercise. I've been at this almost 30 years now, honestly. I've never seen a perfect research project. I don't think anybody has. And so there's always trade-offs, and you just have to decide for this exercise, which trade-offs do you want to make to get the best decision for this specific decision-making exercise.
Yeah, great. And privacy regulations are also continuing to impact research practices as well. So, how are the leading organizations that you are working with adapting their approaches to remain compliant while still gathering these meaningful customer insights?
Yeah. I mean, the first thing I would say is stay informed. And if you don't have an information channel, you should get one. One of the biggest things that people stay connected to the Insights Association for is we're constantly pushing out privacy information, changes in privacy law. We're actually advocating on the Hill to make sure that the privacy laws that are directed at marketing don't scoop up market and research and true insights and research exercises. And so stay informed, have an information channel and spend time in that. And build some community, have some other people that are working with you on that. But then aside from that, just in every exercise, stay like human needs centered. Ask yourself the questions when you're going through an exercise. What do people need to know to feel informed about the data that we're collecting and why we're collecting it? What are their risks and how can I mitigate those? Like stay focused on their human needs as we're asking them to participate in research. What's the experience of understanding their rights and considerations? If I put something in front of them, can they understand it? Is what I mean by that. Is it written in such language that they're never going to understand it? And then what's your cultural general attitude toward people's data? Do you see it as their data that you should protect and safeguard? That would be my hope. Or do you have a more of a laissez-faire attitude towards people's data? And so spend some time on your culture of data, but stay informed and then really work on your own culture of data from like a human needs perspective, because people do feel very personal about their data. And when they feel that personal about it, it comes from a place of human need, and staying focused on that will help you a lot.
Yeah. I think it's also how many people in an organization have access to how much data as well.
Yes.
So that goes right into the culture of what
It
you
does.
were saying, because your company has a certain methodology on it. If one of the employees does not, then it takes away from the culture, of course.
Absolutely. Yep.
So, as we've talked about a bit, you've witnessed the evolution from traditional market research to broader change to insights and analytics industry. So what are the critical capabilities that are missing in organizations that still think of research in this traditional form?
So I think of the ABCs of data: A for attitudinal data, B for behavioral data, and C for conversational data. And most of the companies that struggle in these areas, they focus on one of those types of data, sort of to the detriment of the others. They're very good at attitudinal data, survey data, asking people their values, or they're very good at social media conversational data, or they're really good at behavioral data, and then they forget about asking the why behind the behavioral data. The really good companies that we need more of, the sort of the gap, is companies that have a really good balance of using all the data, attitudinal, behavioral, and conversational data, to create a really round whole data set and tell a better story, and are constantly feeding in all of that data for any project where they can. It's easy, in our minds, we have our own biases, and it's easier to try to solve a data with one method, but it's not always best to try to solve a data with problem with one kind of data. So the gap, I think, in the market today is companies that use all the data all the time, but still stay fast through technology and data literacy. That I think is the magic firm of tomorrow. I just don't see very many of them yet.
Yeah. Well, that actually leads me very nicely into my last question for you. But looking ahead for the next 3 to 5 years, what is one fundamental change you believe every insights professional will need to prepare for?
Every insights professional is going to have to be a technologist. You will not fully be replaced by technology, but you will be replaced by people who really know and use technology. I have been around long enough to remember when you didn't have to be able to be online to conduct research. Now you have to be able to be online to conduct research. You didn't have to use a computer. You could just wander around the mall, do some paper stuff, and then write up a report. I remember writing banner plans with long sheets of paper and a pencil with an eraser, so you could erase your mistakes. So that's all evolved, and it's no different now. That we have evolved. You will have to be a technologist to be a good researcher. You think of, like, the letter T still applies. We used to say you're like a mile wide in something, and then you're like a mile deep in something specific. The mile wide now includes technology. You have to be really good at technology as part of your set of things that you're good at, and then you pick an expertise that you go a mile deep in. Technology used to be something you would go deep in. It's not anymore. It's moved up to the top, and you have to be a good technologist. You have to be data literate, privacy literate, governance literate. You have to know all the kinds of data. You have to know how to access it. You have to be able to float between data sets. And even if you're not the one doing the analytics behind the scenes, you have to be able to speak literately, intelligently about data. And that requires being a technologist. You have to
Yeah.
be a technologist.
Yeah. And I think that's been a growing trend over the past, 10, 15 years as well. And it's never been more true than it is now.
Yeah.
Well, Melanie, thank you so much for joining. Really enjoyed the
Pleasure.
conversation and all of the ideas that you had and where things are going.
Thank you. I appreciate it. If anyone needs anything, you can find me at the Insights Association, and thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Decisions Now. Check out all episodes at evalueserve.com/podcast, and don't forget to subscribe for future episodes.